Hello, government. This is the first official video lecture made in my apartment, not in my classroom, as we're all kind of shifting towards more and more time spent in our homes rather than being out and about in areas we might usually go to. For government this week, a couple things for you all to do and work on, as well as then in this video, I'm just going to do a tiny bit of a lesson for you. That I'd like you just to kind of jot down some notes on. But for this week, the week of the 23rd through the 29th, which is the Sunday at the end of this week, our focus points are now in the Arizona history that you looked at last week. We're now going to zoom in and look at some significant people from the state's history, people who were in the area of this state, whether it was a territory or a state at the time, who are significant to what Arizona is and has been all about. There is a handout or an activity, a document that's posted on what am I looking for? The words I'm looking for. The resources, the digital resources, that is at the bottom of this lesson on our Plus Portals page, for you to type through and work through over the course of the week, which has 10 different people listed. You're going to research each of those people, typing then a brief kind of statement, like a three, 4 sentence write-up for each one based off of what you learned and saw about them, how those people should be remembered, and what their legacy should be seen as over the course then of moving forward, how they should be remembered for what their story is in Arizona history. Be sure at the end of that document to have a works cited listing of the sources that you used. You're welcome to use 1 or 2 websites for all of them. If you are going to use Wikipedia as a starting point, that's fine. Just please do not have it be your listed resource. That's just a standard academic policy. For that, once you've finished up the assignment portion, head on over to the discussions tab on turnitin.com, where you are going to choose one of the 10 people that you learned about, that you found the most interesting, the one that stuck with you the most. And you're going to put together a discussion post in which you're going to talk about why their story impacted you and why you feel like their legacy is one that should be remembered. And then once you've made your post, I'd like you to respond to another classmate as well with a thoughtful discussion further and comment. Do something more than just a great post, love what you did with these words. Do something more than that, please. Something that either is asking a follow-up question or talking through how you also found the person they talked about to be interesting for maybe different reasons. So do that over the course of between now and Sunday. I would definitely recommend doing the assignment earlier so that you have time to then add in the discussion at the end. So that's the main assignment for you. The other portion of what we're going to cover today and this week is starting to kind of jump into the structuring of Arizona state government. We'll have a little more to do with it next week, but I want to just break down for you the general structure of Arizona government, and then you're going to have a discussion to have based on a specific unique aspect of the Arizona state constitution. So once this video is done, you've got your Arizona people activity, the Arizona people discussion, and then there's also going to be a discussion that's just titled Arizona State Constitution. That's going to have you respond to one unique aspect of how Arizona works as a state. That's interesting. It's something less than half of states have. So it's unique and an interesting way in which we all can be participating in government. So at this point, I would recommend that you just kind of lightly jot down some notes based off of the things that I'm saying. So if you need to pause, take out your notes, and then continue again once you're ready. This will be brief, but I'm just going to try to talk through some helpful things about Arizona government. So, first and foremost, the Arizona government, our state government, is structured virtually the same as the federal government. there are three main branches, just like at the federal. There's legislative, executive, and judicial power in the state government. That's broken up in a very similar way to what the federal government uses. We have an Arizona Congress, which has an Arizona State Senate and an Arizona State House of Representatives. Now, just like you and I, if you're 18 and able to vote, or if you're 17 and soon to be a voter, just like we would vote for senators and representatives for the federal Congress, we do the same for our state Congress. Now, the districts are a little bit smaller for the districts that our state representatives and senators come from. But just in the same way, it's people who we vote for that represent our locality or our kind of smaller area that we live in, who are representing what's basically like our extended neighborhood, like the area, smaller area that you live in. So these are people then who are representing very much local interests and trying to be able to discuss laws that are going to be most beneficial for different smaller areas of the state as a whole. They can take a more focused approach to Arizona needs than what the U.S. Congress can do. Now that's the legislative branch. The executive branch, at the federal level, we know that the head of the executive branch is the president, and then the president has different departments, and then the cabinet with the heads of each of those departments. And that's how the president works through executive power, executive responsibilities. And the state government virtually is the same. Instead of president, we have governor. And the governor of Arizona holds the executive power of the state. Now, there are some executive powers that a governor isn't going to have that the federal government executive or the president does, such as the president of the United States, of course, holds power as the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, which is not something that the state executive has. But with that, the governor is still going to head up each of the different executive departments, which then look to carry out the laws that are put together by the Arizona Congress. The governor also is going to work towards suggesting legislation and pushing policy by encouraging the Arizona Senate to kind of get certain ideas into law. But the governor is that's the head of the executive power of the state. And in the judicial branch, we also have an Arizona Supreme Court, which is the Supreme Court of the state. So we, just like the federal government, have as well as like a tiered system. So there's the Arizona Supreme Court, but then there are county courts, and then there are precinct courts. So if it's a case that's a smaller issue or like a normal, when I say normal, I of course mean like daily or thing that happens, those are going to start in those precinct courts. As things then are appealed, they work their way up. If something is a significant issue, a major offense or something like that, then it might go straight to the Arizona Supreme Court. But just like the federal government has different tiers of courts, Arizona does as well, as a way to try to kind of vertically spread apart different judicial needs and questions across the state court system. So that's the general structure of the Arizona government. Legislative, executive, judicial, just like we learned about with the United States government as well. With that, one thing that is unique, and there's a couple things we could focus on, but I want to really emphasize one because it is most relevant to us as residents of Arizona. When it comes to Arizona law, we, of course, have the Arizona Congress that decides ideas for bills to try to hash out language and send the bill on to the governor to be signed into state law. That being said, the Arizona Constitution also sets up something called a ballot initiative. And initiatives are fascinating because they are completely citizen-driven. So here's what an initiative is. Let's say that you and I, we all had ideas about a state law that we thought was necessary. Now, we of course could email or write or visit the office of our state representative or senator and say, here's a thing that we think should be a state law. Will you introduce it to the state Congress? But if we feel like we're not being listened to, by our representative or senator in the state Congress. We actually can make a group in which we write basically the initiative or the bill up ourselves. And if we can submit the initiative through a formal process and get a formal review, all that does is just make sure that the idea for the bill is even possible in the first place, money-wise, everything. If it gets approved as just an idea, then we can collect signatures on it, and if we get enough, it'll go straight to the ballot for all Arizona residents, all Arizona voters. And if the Arizona voters see our initiative idea and they say yes to it, we get a majority of people who say yes, then it goes straight to the governor to be signed into law. Here's why this is really neat, fascinating, and interesting for Arizona. It allows us, as just the people of a state, to actually come up with a system in which we all come up with the language for what will become a law. This allows us to still hold legislative power. It forces the Arizona Congress to, of course, still stay in touch and in tune with the ideas and needs of the Arizona people, but gives us a safety net to make law even if we're not being listened to. Ballot initiatives are fascinating. When it comes to signatures, there's a formula that gets put together for what kind of thing it is that we're trying to put forth. We even can change the state constitution through a ballot initiative. The signatures itself, though, if it's just a standard law, I believe right now the formula calls for somewhere around 230,000 signatures on it. So it's a high number of signatures, but if it's a law that needs to be put into place, then we as people can make law. That's a thing that's unique about Arizona and is interesting. So the idea of the ballot initiative and just how we kind of then can understand our role and powers we have as Arizona residents is what you'll be discussing in the discussion post on turnedin.com. So once you've watched this, then you can get started on that and get moving on through the rest of your week as we keep kind of learning about Arizona's history and Arizona's government. Blessings on your week. I look forward to seeing what you all come up with and your thoughts in the discussions. And until our next online video, see you on the internet.